Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
The Forgotten Times. Why are the so-called experts of archaeology so ignorant of the past? How come whenever solid evidence surfaces that could and should rewrite the textbooks, all they want to is arrogantly argue that it's wrong because their fancy-ass degree says so? For example, they will fight until their dying breath saying that the Sphinx is 4,500 or so years old. But in fact, the bedrock limestone shows significant evidence of water erosion. So water erosion, why is that such a big deal? The Nile Delta in Egypt hasn't seen significant rainfall in over 9,000 years for starters. The kind of erosion we see would have taken thousands of years to take place. Geological evidence suggests it is tens of thousands of years old. And then there's this. There was a vase found in 500-million-year-old rock with species of flower depicted on it which went extinct 100,000 years ago, the Dorchester pot. An iron pot found in 300-million-year-old coal. The Atacama mechanism, Göbekli Tepe, evidence of an ancient global advanced civilization being the ones who built the pyramids all around the globe. It goes on and on. What are they hiding? Is humanity older than we could possibly imagine? Or were there other intelligent beings who ruled the planet predating humanity? What are your thoughts?
Too much work to rewrite history. The archive we have built today was compiled by thousands of minds over thousands of years. The whole connecting the dots between historical events is only really mentioned to the common public if it was documented by humans, and those documents were preserved. Historians will talk all day about curiosities. They won't make claims about things that need more research, though. Give it about 20 or 30 years, and you will see a very different history than the one we have now.
Then what is the point of being a historian, then? These things should make one drool with curiosities to sink their professional teeth into.
History dropout here. I studied history in the considered best college of my country for 4 years before dropping out. Thing is, historians all around play with the ideology approach, teaching history to teach morals and shit. This is the basis for so many texts that get referenced by everyone. The history we have today follows a very linear, slightly branching path of development with the obvious flaws, such as the Bronze Age collapse, being shrugged behind the curtains most of the time. It's even difficult to find people actually interested in ancient history at all because of lack of first-hand accounts. If it doesn't teach Marxism or anything like that, it's not worthy to be studied. I'd be left jobless if I kept going with my Bronze Age specialization, because who's considered a historian today doesn't care. They won't rewrite anything if it doesn't serve an ideological purpose.
What a shit country. I had a great history teacher during high school that told us something like most of ancient history is speculation to fill a void between some more or less proven facts. So take it with a grain of salt.
There's a lot of shit that's wrong around the world. Lots of documentary, lots of this, lots of unexplained shit. Hell, if you pay close attention to all the misinformation these days, we're going backwards. Just in America, they're trying to use emotions instead of telling their people the truth, and they tell people who say the truth to shut up or force them to. Who knows how much the government hides and lies to us? You have all the information on the internet. It's right there for us. But people these days are so overloaded with information that they just can't give a shit. It doesn't help that the media help people to get misinformed so easily.
So much this. You don't even need to hide the information anymore. The public is conditioned to think you're crazy if you talk about anything outside the conventional thought bubble. That's why you can find a lot of really informative stuff online about government cover-ups and alternate archaeology and history, because those who would hide it know the masses will ignore it.
I'm with you 100%, but what really gets me is how stuck these experts are to their version of history. Look at this photo. Cusco, Peru. On the left, you have stones so precisely cut that you couldn't fit a piece of hair in between them. On the right, you have crude cut blocks made by the Inca Empire. Archaeologists say the Inca improved their stone-cutting techniques, even though the superior stuff is on the bottom of every single repaired wall in the country.
I get the sense that some people are just tuned for religious belief. But in our modern atheistic age, Many of them end up latching onto things other than religion and bringing that same religious attitude with them, whether it's appropriate or not. Now you have lots of people who believe in science or history the way people used to believe in the Bible, and if you question even a single line of it, you're a heretic.
That's pretty much how it goes. The New Age religion of university studies, it's like all curiosity has gone out the window due to muck college pride. They won't even touch the fact that there are thousands of ancient ruins underwater all across the globe. Here's one in Lake Michigan, which contradicts how advanced the native inhabitants once were in North America.
That sounds very interesting, and for your question, Anon, scientists can't claim what they can't confirm, but some still write about it.
It's time for /x/ to compile the real history of Earth.
Scientists ran simulations to predict what a human being might look like if they lived in the zero-gravity conditions of space, like from living in space stations and whatnot. If you look it up, we end up looking like the gray aliens people have witnessed and depicted from back thousands of years ago to modern times. Part of me believes that humans in the past got so advanced that they left Earth and adapted to their new non-earthly environments, and that one day soon they might actually come back when we reach a point almost as advanced as they were.
If you look up the prophecy of Atlantis with the Snake Brotherhoods, humanity was a collective consciousness that was split in two, red and yellow, heaven and Helheim. They fell from the heavens when Atlantis sank from the infinite ocean. They became beasts and were cast out of the garden.
There have not just been one or two precursor civilizations in human history. There have been at least dozens. Chasing a singular Atlantis/Lemuria/Mu is a mistake. It is, in fact, a rich history of relatively low-technology civilizations rising and falling as far back as about 70,000 years or perhaps longer. Modern mainstream consensus even admits that relatively low-tech civilizations are capable of megalithic stonework and masonry. If we can accept that a small civilization arose and flourished around the Nile Delta and built such structures, then why can't similar megalithic sites all over the globe be attributed to not just one but several dozen previous human civilizations? For example, suppose it is the year 55,000 BC. A civilization arises around a verdant and fertile area of land. Humans are anatomically identical to those who founded our earliest civilizations, so this is not unreasonable. They flourish in this small area, and their technology does not surpass anything we know of. They build megalithic structures and are eventually wiped out by natural disaster, disease, what have you. The ruins of this civilization sink into history and only their megaliths remain. Why should all of these ancient sites be attributed to just one precursor civilization? Why not dozens? Why not hundreds? And before somebody says, but they all built pyramids, I'll stop you right there and say creating the most practical layered earthwork is no more amazing than two people on opposite ends of the globe deciding a cup is the best thing to put water in.
You're probably correct, but also your thoughts about the pyramids are pretty stupid. The similarities between some pyramids across entire continents is so unreal that they're either copycats following someone else or they're part of the same civilization. It might be safe to say that two people across the globe building this structure is the same as saying two people across the globe will use a cup for water, but it is definitely not safe to say that two people across the globe will worship similar-looking dragons and decorate their cups, pyramids or otherwise with similar-looking dragons and whatever other things these people worshipped.
But that's exactly it. They're copying what they've seen before and what makes the most sense. These groups of civilization were clustered. Sometimes they'd arise all at once, and sometimes humanity was set back, and we had to arise again in separate places. But we always found the same monuments and geometry. A pyramid or a step pyramid or whatever variation on a pyramid you'd like is still a very basic earthwork and the most efficient way to build a structure that lasts.
Maybe it wasn't a large civilization, but a global culture connected by trade routes and shared religious or ritualistic tradition.
It could have been this, but a series of them rising and falling, never reaching technology much beyond the Bronze Age.
How would they just rise and fall consistently without reaching past the Bronze Age? What possible global catastrophe could just reset them? Obviously, there's things like the Great Flood, but other than that, how? There's no way Bronze Age humans would go to extreme lengths to exterminate each other to the point of irrelevance. It just doesn't make any sense. They wouldn't have the ability to travel enough, with enough reliability, even just surviving the trip, or with a large enough group to actually wage war across continents in such a way. Germans couldn't even invade Russia, for fuck's sake.
I'm not one of those guys you are replying to, but I believe catastrophes can take any form or shape, and that many of them were engineered by God or the gods. A disease, a war, poisoning, some natural catastrophe we're aware of like a flood or tornado, or a catastrophe we haven't seen in a while, and may not know are possible like conflagration or massive electrical storm.
Back to the basics, fire from above and water. There have been and will be again many destructions of mankind arising out of many causes. The greatest have been brought about by the agencies of fire and water, and other lesser ones by innumerable other causes. There is a story which even you have preserved, that once upon a time Pathon, the son of Helios, having yoked the steeds in his father's chariot, because he was not able to drive them in the path of his father, burnt up all that was upon the earth, and was himself destroyed by a thunderbolt. Now this has the form of a myth, but really signifies a declination of the bodies moving in the heavens around the earth, and a great conflagration of things upon the earth, which recurs after long intervals. At such times those who live upon the mountains and in dry and lofty places are more liable to destruction than those who dwell by rivers or on the seashore. And from this calamity the Nile, who is our never-failing Savior, delivers and preserves us. When on the other hand the gods purge the earth with a deluge of water, the survivors in your country are herdsmen and shepherds who dwell on the mountains, but those who, like you, live in cities are carried by the rivers into the sea. Whereas in this land neither then nor at any other time does the water come down from above on the fields, having always a tendency to come up from below, for which reason the traditions preserved here are the most ancient.
This is the most based post I've seen regarding the things I've asked, and it sounds quite like the event described concerning Python was a meteoric event. It also very much makes sense that depending on what type of calamity would result in different types of people surviving, along with reasoning for why great ancient civilizations would disappear only for their ruins to be inhabited by less advanced people coming down from the mountains.
The Hopi tribe also speaks of previous worlds, ages, civilizations that were destroyed on schedule by various forms of cataclysm.
Most mythologies say the world has been destroyed and recreated at least twice. Instead of guessing, I'll provide specific examples from a cultural area that certainly suffered severe population losses during the last period of cataclysms. Ant people of Hopi myth. The Ant people rescued Native Americans not once but twice. This occurred when the earth was destroyed, first by fire and then by ice, and one earth world passed into another. It is told down through the generations, in Native American story, that the Ant people took groups of virtuous humans into their underground homes and protected and taught them until the earth was safe for humans to once again walk in the sun. The Hopi people of what is today northern Arizona have a distinct belief system that is based on an origin story and provides the basis for spiritual traditions and the moral codes of social life. In some versions of the Hopi belief system, it is said that the ancestors of the Hopi traveled through 3 caves into the 4th world, Earth. In each cave they found different important portions of their religion and life ways. In the first cave they found agriculture, in the second manufacturing, and in the third spirituality. They emerged into the 4th world in the Grand Canyon, which was covered in water. This water was cleared by deities, and the Hopi followed a path set for them by MITZU, god of death, into the land where they now reside. The Ant people myth fits seamlessly into the Topka creation myth. The myth of Tokpa, the second world, the first people of Tokpela, the first world, were safely sheltered underground as fire rained down upon the earth. Volcanoes and firestorms destroyed all that was above them until the earth, the waters, and the air itself was all elemental fire. While this was going on, the people lived happily underground with the Ant people. Their homes were just like the people's homes on the earth's surface being destroyed. There were rooms to live in and rooms where they stored their food. There was light to see by, too. The tiny bits of crystal in the sand of the anthill had absorbed the light of the sun, and using the inner vision of the center located behind the eyes, they could see by its reflection very well. It had not taken Sotunang long to destroy the world, nor would it take him long to create another one. But it was taking a long time for the first world to cool off before a second world could be created. That was why the food was running short. "You are our guests," the ant people said. "What we have is yours also." So the ant people continued to deprive themselves of food in order to supply their guests. Finally, that which had been the first world cooled off. Sotunang purified it. Then he began to create the second world. He changed its form completely, putting land where there was water and water where there was land, so that the people upon their emergence would have nothing to remind them of the previous wicked world. Sotunang spoke first to the ant people. "I am thanking you for doing your part in helping to save these people. It will always be remembered. This you have done. The time will come when another world will be destroyed, and when the wicked people know their last day on earth has come, they will sit by an anthill and cry for the ants to save them. Now, having fulfilled your duty, you may go forth to this second world and take your place as ants." Maybe only slightly relevant. When the Dharma is about to disappear, women will become vigorous and will at all times do deeds of virtue. Men will grow lax and will no longer speak the Dharma. Those who are genuine Shramanas will be looked upon as dung, and no one will have faith in them. When the Dharma is about to perish, all the gods will begin to weep. Rivers will dry up, and the 5 grains will not ripen. Pestilences will frequently take millions of lives. The masses will toil and suffer while the local officials will plot and scheme. No one will adhere to principles. Instead, the human race will multiply, becoming like the sands of the ocean bed. Good persons will be hard to find. At most, there will be 1 or 2. As the eon comes to a close, the revolutions of the sun and the moon will grow short, and the lifespan of people will decrease. Their hair will turn white by the time they are 40. Because of excessive licentious behavior, they will quickly exhaust their seminal fluids and will die at a young age, usually before 60 years. As the lifespan of males decreases, that of females will increase to 70, 80, 90, or 100 years. And further, there will be in the course of the future monks undeveloped in body, virtue, mind, discernment. They, being undeveloped in body, virtue, mind, and discernment, will not listen when discourses that are words of the Tathagata, deep in their meaning, transcendent, connected with emptiness, are being recited. They will not lend ear, will not set their hearts on knowing them, will not regard these teachings as worth grasping or mastering. But they will listen when discourses that are literary works, the works of poets, artful in sound, artful in rhetoric, the work of outsiders, words of disciples, are recited. They will lend ear and set their hearts on knowing them. They will regard these teachings as worth grasping and mastering. Thus from corrupt Dhamma comes corrupt Vinaya. From corrupt Vinaya, corrupt Dhamma. This, monks, is the 4th future danger, unarisen at present, that will arise in the future. Be alert to it, and being alert, work to get rid of it. And further, there will be in the course of the future monks undeveloped in body, virtue, mind, discernment. They, being undeveloped in body, virtue, mind, discernment, will become elders living in luxury, lethargic, foremost in falling back, shirking the duties of solitude. They will not make an effort for the attaining of the as yet unattained, the reaching of the as yet unreached, the realization of the as yet unrealized. They will become an example for later generations, who will become luxurious in their living, lethargic, foremost in falling back, shirking the duties of solitude, and who will not make an effort for the attaining of the as yet unattained, the reaching of the as yet unreached, the realization of the as yet unrealized. Thus from corrupt Dhamma comes corrupt Vinaya, from corrupt Vinaya corrupt Dhamma. This, monks, is the 5th future danger, unarisen at present, that will arise in the future. Be alert to it, and being alert, work to get rid of it. The Master said, "In this Dharma-ending age, people possess much idle knowledge. If you want to distinguish true from false, there are 3 types of defilement to be aware of: The first is defiled views. This is said to be not departing from a particular fixed view about the potential for enlightenment and thus falling into a sea of poison. The second is defiled emotions. This is said to be entrapment in preferences and repulsions, thus having one's perspective become one-sided and rigid. The third is defiled language. This is said to be mastering trivia and losing sight of the essential. The potential for enlightenment is thoroughly obscured. You should understand clearly that a disciple whose understanding is muddled and is going round and round in circles has not done away with these three types of defilements. There are quite a few Zen teachers in the world, talking about Zen, talking about Tao. Do you think they are self-deceived or not self-deceived? Do you think they are deceiving others or not deceiving others? It is imperative to discern minutely.
I recently heard the idea that a chemical compound could have been developed in Peru that allowed the softening of stone to a clay-like substance. It doesn't explain moving 1-ton rocks out of riverbeds to Machu Picchu, but it would explain the placing and positioning of stones without cutting, and the lack of space between stones. Imagine heavy stones with clay-like edges settling into themselves with gravity.
Even Petrie noted many blocks were obviously concrete, though he concedes this conclusion is based on form and construction, not material properties. His case still stands for good reason. Whether it was softening or geopolymer, the practice is also widely seen in Asia and Africa. Though virtually unknown in the West, there are a large number of pyramid complexes and other megalithic sites in China, which may have surpassed the Giza complex in their scale and complexity. Many of these sites hold similar, liquefied rock artifacts, exhibited either by the ubiquitous scoop marks or organic geometry as seen in South America. In Malta, Orthodox archaeology has conceded that concrete was used to form the floor blocks of several temples, notably Tarxian and Gantija. This is interesting because this concrete is acknowledged to be extremely hard as modern formulated concrete. A story was told by the local Aymara Indians to a Spanish traveler who visited Tiahuanaco shortly after the conquest of the city's original foundation in the age of Chamakpacha, or First Creation, long before the coming of the Incas. Its earliest inhabitants, they said, possessed supernatural powers, for which they were able miraculously to lift stones off the ground, which ones were carried from the mountain quarries through the air to the sound of a trumpet. The ancient stones speak. Perhaps the rock softening process was not only chemical, but had an acoustic component. Acoustic energy would aid the penetration of rock by leaching chemicals.
More Western sites start to crop up if you dig, but off the top of my head, because you mentioned Malta. There's this YouTube channel I enjoy from a guy who used to live there and moved to the UK, and he urban explores in ruins. And something I never would have put together without seeing it is the ancient burnt-out crap all over England.
Vitrified forts? They are very interesting and suggest a hidden function of ancient stone fortifications, as well as some kind of sintering technology. Yes, you are correct, there are many sites that are virtually unknown, unless you sift through the literature. There are also many astonishing constructions hiding in plain sight, which do not get the recognition they deserve. The pyramids of China are particularly obscured because the government has limited access to only local native research teams. International and Western researchers have never been allowed onto these sites with only a few exceptions.
Wow, yes! The Incas believed in Viracocha, a deity who was known as talkative. I read that now as an allusion to the nature of the power of sound and/or their voice. Incredible thread. Thank you, OP. It's also worth mentioning that the Incan emperor Hatun Tupac Inca claimed the god's name after he witnessed Viracocha's arrival at Lake Titicaca. His son was Pachacuti Kusi Yupanqui, whose name translates to either world reverser or earth shaker. Again, a direct reference to acoustic energy transmitted through the earth. Around 1425, the Inca civilization was attacked by their archenemies, the Chancas. Pachacutec commands a hasty defense of the capital, while his father Viracocha and brother Urco flee into hiding. Pachacutec is able to defeat the invading army easily, inflicting minimal casualties and winning the fearful adoration of the Chanca army. Stories about him describe Pachacutec as causing earthquakes and sending boulders flying through the air at the enemy. It's interesting that a prince named Earthshaker would prove himself in battle in such a way. His father returns, with the populace calling him a coward. Pachacutec attempts to resolve the situation by presenting his father with the Chanka's leader, who he captured. Viracocha declines, insisting his eldest son Urko will deal with the prisoners. Pachacutec is outraged. He refuses to submit the prisoners to his brother, who refused to assist in the defense. Viracocha plots to assassinate his son, but the plot is quickly discovered as Viracocha's aides no longer trust him. Viracocha is exiled, and Pachacutec becomes the de facto emperor. It's worth noting, Pachacutec was not anything like his father, because after the arrival of Viracocha, his father had dedicated the city to teaching the wisdom of the gods, and Pachacutec grew up in the literal center of this effort. He was mostly raised by scribes and sages and would later build his own architectural and cultural legacy based on Viracocha's wisdom. His father discovered these things, but Pachacutec benefited from them in his being.
In June 1992, a villager named Wu Anai decided to pump the water out in one of the locally known caves, revealing the first of many man-made caves in the region. After 17 days pumping, enough water had been removed to reveal the cave, including several carved stelae, thus confirming his idea that they were not natural reservoirs at all, but rather man-made. The floor of the grotto occupies more than 2,000 square meters, with the tallest point of the cave exceeding 30 meters. The 4 steles of Cave 1 are symmetrically distributed. Following this discovery, he continued to pump out another 4 caves, only to find that they all bore the same markings on the walls and ceilings. The Longyu caves in China were discovered in the late 20th century. 24 artificial caves representing nearly 1 million cubic meters of hard stone, mostly igneous bedrock. It is not known if more caves exist, as deeper passages are still submerged or blocked today. It has been noted that every inch of the interior surfaces are covered in scrape marks in careful patterns, as if a machine was used. Some have said his precision is symbolic, and the pattern can be found on other pottery artifacts held by museums in the region. The nature of this undertaking is astonishing, because unlike other subterranean megalithic city complexes found throughout the world, the Longyu caves are clearly not designed for inhabitation and appear to have a deeper significance. It has been suggested the caves are arranged in astronomical positions.
Modern science is hyper-fragmented into discrete compartments that rarely intersect, each with specialized terminology units and systems. In the last 40 years, humans have almost certainly reacquired a large portion of lost high technology, but do so only in narrowly focused specializations. The fundamental science behind this technology is already understood in nuclear, quantum, and energetic sciences, though without grasping the way these systems interact with consciousness. There is a myth of 12 scholars who have been blinded feeling an elephant trying to figure out what it was. One feels the ear and thinks it's a tropical leaf. One feels the leg and thinks it's a tree. One thinks the trunk is a snake, etc. Science is currently in a similar dilemma.
This is interesting, and I'd like you to speak more on it, but I was more so wondering if there's any modern spiritual practice who has maybe gotten close to rediscovering these technologies.
There are a number of practices that can help you understand yourself, which is a crucial part of learning. Admitting you are wrong about assumptions or understandings over and over is necessary, and without knowing self, this process can be stifling. This also relates to overcoming fear, a very important step for anyone aspiring to learn. Ultimately, no particular school or learning is needed to understand nature, our past and apparent purpose. I would say that an approach within a lens of science is more functional in today's world and more likely to make an impact.
Well, that used to be the case since the 1700s, but now the process is reverting. It starts with neuroscience merging with computer science and physics. After that happens, it will merge with metaphysics. But in our timeline, this requires artificial general intelligence, so it kinda sucks we had to follow this path.
There are signs the process has been making advances in certain areas, But I would insist the overall tone of physics prevented any cogent understanding of consciousness for a very long time until just recently. The etheric theory typified this. While the theory was self-aware of its roots in ancient traditions, it still remained an insulated scientific mechanism that had to coexist with Newtonian physics, a clear contradiction. Thus it became an explanation for not only electricity and consciousness fields, but also inertia and gravity. That paradigm has existed for a while, and continues in the form of dark matter study. Thankfully, modern thought has begun to reopen the doors to the idea of unified systems that, even if imperfect in certain applications, are more functional for understanding awareness. Dark matter could just be the visual effects of a pan-universal standing wave, collecting the denser material of a variable density medium in said wave's troughs as opposed to an unobservant gravity source. In all seriousness, the ancients' understanding and use of nuclear materials for all kinds of applications is a major point. We have a false idea around nuclear technology that all nuclear devices need high-voltage systems, cryogenics, pressure vessels, etc. Theoretically, the only technology needed to exploit natural uranium ore for practical heat power generation is smelting. Ancient man could have identified uranium ore, smelted it, and piled it up in storage, and this would be sufficient to produce excess heat. It's easy to imagine this event occurring by accident, as if to illustrate how easy it is to harness subcritical fission. On top of this, the applications of radioactive material in assembling nanostructured and chemically reactive materials are even less technological and can be obtained by craftsmen with minimal preparation and tools. It's easy to forget that materials such as silk and impregnated glass are natural nanomaterials and can be manipulated with electrolysis, furnace sintering, and chemical processes to embed radioactive particles. These materials can then be used as chemical catalysts in optics, power generation, high-voltage current conditioning, etc. All of this can be done without metallic alloys, ground optical lenses, or artificial magnets. A simple liquid solution of fissile particles can be used to trigger quantum state-dependent fission events in pure metals. In other words, you can grind down smelted uranium ore, suspend it in a heavy solution, drop ingots of impure metals in, and produce specific neutron interactions depending on the materials used. This technique was proven in the 1950s at LANL, and modern iterations have been funded by NASA's ENIAC program.
The progenitors lost their civilization in the Earth's heyday, and they knew this. They knew a new, noble civilization would soon emerge after them. They directed the resources of ancient man towards rekindling that fire of aspiration that humans burn with. Their riddles are subtle but not ironic. They provided the keys to the tools in plain sight, and did not pretend their order required initiates or interpretation. Simple, universal logic encodes the locations and stories of significance. We have been prepared for this, though we did not always know it. Ancient man knew the key to his wisdom would be lost in the procession of the planet and allotted for this. The keys are now in our hand. All we must do is initiate the act of rebirth. And with totality we will do this, because no matter our belief, this is our time, and this is the time of great change beyond anything our ancestors could have imagined. We have emancipated ourselves many times over, only to be sojourned by our own. It is time.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel, as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check the Odyssey and Rumble pages for separate archives of previous broadcasts.